That's me with the needle in my arm. You're probably wondering how I got there. Let me take you back to the start real quick.
What's up? My name is Steph, I'm a 25-year-old Canadian, and for the past 3 years, I've been traveling the world on and off. A question that comes back all the time is people asking me how I'm able to afford to travel so much. So I figured that today I'd let you in on a little secret and let you know exactly how I've been making money this past year. The truth is, I'm a drug lord. And by drugs, I don't mean this. I mean I test out drugs in clinical trials until they're ready to hit the market. So what is a clinical trial? It's basically a group of human lab rats that test out medication. Someone invents a drug. It gets brought over to a clinical trial center. There, a bunch of participants take the drug, and there's a battery of tests that is run on the participants to make sure that the drug is safe and that it works in the way that it's intended to work. Once everything is deemed successful and safe, it can now be sold to the general population. Now, the killer question, can you die in a clinical trial? The real truth is, unfortunately, yes, some people have died in trials before, but that amount is incredibly tiny compared to the millions and millions of people who participate in trials worldwide every year. Before you start, you meet with a doctor and you review the documentation of the trial you're going to take a part of, so you know about the effects, the risks, and exactly what it is you're going to take. I personally have participated in 6 trials so far, and I've never had any bad effects whatsoever. Some people do get some short-term effects, some people do get some long-term effects, and a lot of people never have any effects. At the end of the day, it really comes down to what you're comfortable with and the kind of risks you're willing to take. Let's talk about the money. Clinical trials are important because they end up developing drugs that can save people's lives. But if we're real for a second, it can also end up saving our wallets. Why? Because clinical trials can give you a lot of money. How that works and how much money you get really depends on the company funding the trial as well as the center you are at. There are 2 kinds of trials. You can do outpatient, where you go into the center, do a few tests, and then go home. That usually ends up being a lot less money. There are also inpatient trials, where you go inside the center, you stay there 24/7 for a certain amount of days, and that usually involves a lot more money. The longest trial I've done was 27 days. In that trial, a few days I had to take medication, the rest of the time I was making friends, hanging out in the lounge, watching movies, playing pool, video games, or reading a book. It's basically a hostel where you get paid. And for that study, I got just under 7,000 American dollars. Not too shabby for basically hanging out for a month. What is my craziest clinical trial study? Let me tell you. 1 year ago, I heard about a study in Australia that was paying $9,000 for 1 month. I got on the plane the next day. The only problem is I was 18 pounds too heavy for that study. In my mind, I have 1 month to lose 18 pounds. Already, that's a difficult mission, but I thought that was a mission that I can accomplish. So I get on my flight, I get to Australia, very confident that I'm gonna get into the study. The problem is, I realized that in 3 days I have the test. So before you get into a trial, you get a big screening test where they decide if you're healthy enough to participate. What I didn't realize was that in that test, I needed to have lost the 18 pounds I thought I had a month to lose. So already I had lost some weight, but not nearly enough. So I'm thinking, what are some ways that I can lose some quick weight? I thought about boxers. How do they lose a lot of weight before a weigh-in? They go to the sauna, just sweat it out, and lose a lot of weight. And that's what I decided to do. First of all, disclaimer, do not do that. It is not healthy, it is very dangerous, and I do not recommend that you try this at home. That being said, this is my story. So for the next 3 days, I stopped eating, I stopped drinking, and I was going 2 hours a day to the sauna with pants on, with a jacket on, with a hat on to try to sweat my life away. The first 2 days go pretty well. I'm starving, I'm very thirsty, but I got 9 grand on my mind. on day 3, the day of the testing, I decide to go to the sauna in the morning to get those last few pounds out. So I'm about an hour in when I start getting a nosebleed, and that's when I realized I will kill myself if I continue. So I decided that I lost as much as I physically could and that I would just go to the testing and hope I lost enough. I get to the scale and I realize that beside the scale there's this kind of desk that if I put my hand in a subtle enough way, the nurse might not see it and I could transfer some of my weight over and maybe make the cut for the weights. At that point, I am so nervous because I feel like I'm James Bond in an undercover mission. So I'm kind of putting my weight on there, but I am shaking. The nurse doesn't see me, but he sees the scale going up, down, just about the weight that it should be, but it keeps on moving. So he makes me step off and on the scale 3 to 4 times before he realizes that the scale is broken. So he brings me to the other room, to the other scale. I think no problem, I'll just start over and try to be less shaky. That is not possible because this scale is in the middle of the room. There is no escape to this one. So I have to step on and I do not make the weight cut by 1 pound. Guys, I flew to Australia to be 1 pound too heavy for the study. The thing is, I was super disappointed, but the truth is, I was so physically dehydrated that I continued drinking. I drank so much. I drank so much water and juice that day and the next day, and it literally took me 36 hours before I could pee again. That is insanity. It was insane. I almost died. It was really bad. And even if I had made the weight cut, there is a urine test in those studies, so I wouldn't even had been able to do the urine test because I was so dehydrated. So that did not work out as planned. That was definitely my craziest trial story. So there you have it. That is the world of clinical trials. Let me know in the comments down below if you have ever done a clinical trial or if you have thought about doing one. I will leave also the links of the different centers that I have done trials at. If you do end up doing a trial there, do give my name as a reference and I will send you a gift personally. Tune in next week for a new video.